Well, I couldn't really think of a better way to celebrate the 4th of July than with the return of the Trials of Tzeentch. Change, independence, fireworks, and a whole lot of xenocide as the Dwarfs of the Karazankor face off against their hated greenskin enemies. This was not the most competitive of games, Trials of Tzeentch rarely are, but it was hilarious and it was visually stunning and a whole hell of a lot of fun. Because when the Changer of Ways has blessed your Donglas with a full army of Irondrakes and artillery, battles end up looking like something from a Michael Bay explosion movie. Explosions with Michael Bay! So we have very little in the way of actual infantry here. 2 Longbeards, 2 Dwarf Warriors, 3 weapons, and that's it. But there are 4 Irondrakes, 3 with flamethrowers, a Rune Lord without his Anvil of Doom, 3 organ guns, and 2 grudge throwers. So take a look at all this artillery for a second, all that firepower, and tell me this isn't a great way to celebrate some Dawi independence. Now, if you're ever in a situation where you have very little infantry, I'd actually argue it's better to stagger your lines rather than blob up, because I see a lot of new Dwarf players kind of get really tight in their formation. But the problem with that is that a single Wolf Rider or Squig Hopper can kind of bounce through and tie up all that artillery at once. And if you're letting a single fast mover do that to you, that's a big issue when artillery is all your killing power. Now, my opponent is Slizzle, a friend and patron who played a bunch of Trials with me the other day, so you'll see a few more of our matches after this one. But he's also playing by the same rules, completely random generated army, and like mine, his army is kind of terrible, but in the awesome and hilarious way. He has very little in the way of armor-piercing damage and a ton of low leadership chaff that should be exceptionally fun to blow into the next dimension. That's what she said. Now, Orc Boys, Goblins, he does have the 8-peak loonies and the Warlord's boys who have armor sundering, which would help quite a bit in the infantry fight. Durkat Squigs with their AP and bonus versus infantry is also a decent choice. But other than that, his army's not particularly well suited for fighting the Dwarfs. But my army's not really a typical Dwarf army now, is it? And that's half the fun of this game mode anyway, right? Going well outside the meta. But let's get the battle started right and proper by sending some Gobos back from whence they came. Goblobber slamming into the midst of the Orc Boys, and their approach is going to be looking like D-Day real fast. Rockets, red glare, Groby bursting in air. They're taking obscene casualties before they even get a taste of melee. But with only 4 Dawi infantry, protecting all those Irondrakes and organ guns might be pretty challenging. Orc Boys taking a ton of damage on the way in. Goblobber's doing quite a bit. And organ guns, those ever so satisfying infantry mulchers, begin their repeating salvos now. And it is blood on the sand here at the Mortis Waste. A torrid affair so far. Big guns are a threat. Fire shifting to them. While Orc Boys on the right flank will be persuaded to leave after a brutal volley to the Donglas. And they might return, but not with many of their number left. Rest of the Wa continuing their march in the face of withering fire, and that's before the Irondrakes have even let loose a single volley yet. And think about the best way to stop a Greenskin horde in its tracks. It's probably a healthy burst of napalm in the morning. Love that smell. Smells like victory. But remember, as soon as those Greenskins make contact, that pendulum should start shifting back the other direction. Start of this battle has been a dream though. You just don't see armies like this in multiplayer. That kind of range firepower very often. And you don't see Irondrakes get to do this very often either against a true horde enemy. Greenskins taking a healthy gout of flame to the face there. And another one coming in now. And that is brutal, dude. That is probably the most goddamn satisfying thing I've seen on this game in a really long time. Literally, entire unit just melts in 2 volleys of Irondrake flame. And Master Rune of Wrath and Ruin going down on some Goblin Wolf Riders who are trying to jump in from the flank to tie up those Irondrakes there. They will retreat behind the safety of their shield wall. But again, without much Dwarf infantry on the field protecting all these backline units is going to be insanely hard. Master Rune of Wrath and Ruin will be exceptionally helpful though for deleting those cavalry and just making them a lot slower. You make a Goblin Wolf Rider lose 48% of its speed, that's going to make it a lot less effective, and you can see they just routed already. But Durkat Squigs into the flank now, already tying up the organ gun crew before one volley actually gets a couple, blows a couple of their faces off there, and rest of the Goblins moving out up the left flank. Goblin archers getting some good shots in from the front, but they're not armor sundering, and they're firing into very heavily armored stuff, so they're not going to make a very big impact this game. More Goblins being roasted and toasted from the flank there, and we're getting a spell you don't see very often. Curse of the Bad Moon down on top of the Irondrakes doing, well, nothing, because it's a pretty trash spell. But nice to see that trying to get used on top of a big blob of Irondrakes. More of them pouring in the flame here. My god, that is disgusting. And this is the glory of the Trials of Tzeentch. It makes you use units that you don't typically ever bring. Like, I don't play a lot of Dwarfs anyway, right? But when you see what the Irondrakes are doing here, like, how do you not want to just use the crap out of this unit? They are amazing in campaign. In multiplayer, very, very infrequently used simply because they can be shut down so easily, tied up. And a lot of the time they seem to not do that much damage, but against the right faction, against Skaven, against Greenskins, against any Horde faction, Undead too. I mean, yeah, like look what they're doing. Like, you can't knock what they're able to put out. They will actually rip through hordes of unarmored infantry. But Dark Twigs have come back here. They will tie down the Goblin, actually that's the Goblobber itself, and they should have no problem killing off the rest of that crew as the Trollhammer torpedoes get some good shots into the Squig Herd who are coming up now, and that AP bonus versus infantry will be a problem for the Dwarfs here. With such little infantry, those Dwarf great weapon units are getting completely run over, they're getting munched up, and then another charge directly through into the back of the Trollhammer torpedoes. They try to escape, and they won't let them. But more napalm roaring in, coating squiggly beasts with incinerating gel right there, and this is why I decided to spread the field with my artillery. Despite not having anywhere near enough infantry coverage to protect it all, it's for that enfilade fire from the organ guns and from the Irondrakes, and they don't need much time to rack up a ton of kills. One of the most brutal and fast-firing arty pieces in the entire game, and as you've seen, the Irondrakes can do quite a bit themselves. As Wob pops, a bunch of the Greenskin units are routing, but more reinforcements streaming in now. The Warlord's boys, Night Goblins, and Eat Peak Loonies as the Dwarf Warriors' great weapons charge forward now, smash in, and more Irondrakes getting some really good shots off into the remnants of some of those regiments of renown. Sit back, watch the bastards burn. But we're playing a deadly game of keep away right now. Anytime one of those guns falls silent or the Irondrakes get tied up in melee, try to shift the focus away from them, create a bit of space for them and whoever hasn't been tied down so that whatever has not been closed up in melee can fire, maybe free up whatever has been. And that's what we're doing here. These Irondrakes have been shut down by some of those Goblins, but as we pull them back, we have two free Irondrake units that can fire in from the flank and create some space for them. So the important thing here is to make sure that all these range units, all these artillery pieces aren't close to each other so that something like the Squig Hoppers or the Squigs can't get in and tie them both up at the same time, because that's when we're going to have a really big issue when all of our range units have been tied down at once, because we have no DPS from our infantry whatsoever. But a bunch of the artillery still somehow firing, Irondrake still firing it as well, and if you let them use their ammunition, you're going to be having a very bad day, and the ground has been coated in the blood and the little giblets of all these poor goblins. Oh my god. Like, I told you this was a visually interesting replay. I wasn't lying. I mean, you just don't see battles like this very often. I don't recommend pulling this kind of thing out in multiplayer, because if your opponent has a normal build, you're probably gonna get completely rolled over, because protecting all your stuff is gonna be so hard. But this isn't a normal Greenskin build either, and he didn't have any particularly great dwarf killing units. I mean, he didn't have any Black Orcs, he didn't have a lot of armor piercing, he didn't have any high leadership cavalry that could get in and actually tie up all the backline stuff without routing to the Irondrakes. And so even though he did a good job of shutting down some of those cannons early and getting into the Irondrakes, I mean, Goblin Wolf Riders are going to rout the second they take a gout of flame to the face. And so the low leadership for the Greenskins here has been a big problem, and I don't blame them for having low leadership when you're getting mulched by organ gun fire, when you're getting burned to a crisp by Irondrake fire, when you're being blown in half by your own Goblobbers. Like, that's not a fun way to go. And the Greenskins are routing like crazy right now, but some of them will come back to the fight. The Goblin War Boss is still around. There are remnants here or there, but they've been picked apart from range, and there's not much left for either army. Tomb Kings call it the Dead Waste for a reason. Quite a few new offerings for the Blood God littering its sands now, and the Goblin War Boss will soon join in the fold fighting a Rune Lord. Dwarves are in the ascendancy. Greenskins will not be able to pull this one back, but not before they get one last glorious, hilarious charge into the front of the not Irondrake, those are Longbeard shield walls, although there'll be some friendly fire there too, charging right into the front, flame hitting them in the back, and that will be the battle. Like I said, not the most competitive or meta-focused Trials of Tzeentch I've ever done, but that's not why we watch them, right? We watch them because they're really fun to watch, really weird armies and unused units just duke it out, and it is so much better when some of those random units actually perform well, and they did here. Irondrake's doing a massive amount of damage, even getting quite a few kills themselves, not just doing the HP damage that they're typically known for. Usually won't get that many kills because they're spreading out damage across so many models, but here, almost got 100 on one of them. Organ Gun, one of them was left untouched for almost the entire battle because there were so many different range units that he had to tie up, and all his stuff had no armor, which meant that each of those Irondrakes could do quite a lot of damage. And so when that Organ Gun left untouched, I mean, 200 kills easy, not a problem. Probably didn't even use all of its ammunition, but that was just a really visually fun and stunning one. There will be more games with Slizzle coming soon. We had some really close ones that I thought were quite entertaining to watch. See you next time. Any Pride, signing out for now.